I'm Dell Sanchez. My real name is Delfino, which means dolphin. And I'm named after my father and my grandfather. And it's a long story, but I'm not here to tell you about myself, although I have to a little bit through my eyes and by my heart, porque mi corazón arde, okay? Because my heart is hot and fiercely impassioned with this subject. My title is The Legacy of Anusim, or Secrecy rather, the legacy of secrecy among Anusim in the United States. And I'd like to just make a comment, and this is just kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of just kidding, but not kidding, all right? The theme of this conference is mapping the Anusim diaspora. And I would propose the spirit that the rabbis before lunch communicated to us, and I would propose mapping without trapping America's Anusim, because we've gone through so much. The first speaker to open yesterday talked about trauma. We've had our share, as I'm sure all of you. That I would like to think that those of us that made it all the way across the Rio Grande from Mexico into Texas and New Mexico, and from there we scattered. Like good Jews, we multiplied and we've prospered and we're here and we're alive. So I would like to declare as an Anusim myself, who goes back to American conquistadors, Anusim conquistadores, that such as Don Juan de Oñate, all right, and his cousin Vicente Saldivar de Oñate, and he married. And then I married my wife, who also descends from the line of Oñate. So I'm telling you that by fact, we have this genealogically that we come from Anusim conquistadores. And if we have the spirit of our forefathers, we're fighters. That's why we're here. Because it wasn't a piece of cake to get here, as you know, and as you can imagine, all right? We're warriors, all right? We're warriors. At the turn of the 20th century, when Protestantism and then Pentecostalism and then evangelicalism entered the race to colonize and to evangelize our people, our people have undergone a series of many different types of so-called conversions. I sincerely hope that anyone working with Anusim from the USA or wherever be very cautious and utmost wisdom be used in continuing their search for the Anusim that we've been in hiding for so many centuries. The question that arises today is, are there real Anusim in the United States of America? When I met with a high-ranking official in the Israeli bureaucracy, he said, after hearing my wife and I, he said, this is a miracle. 3 times, this is a miracle. Indeed, it is a miracle. And so that's why we are here. So if you wish to put a face to Anusim, well, here's one, all right? And there's my wife. And there are other Americans from the Southwest and even from Tennessee, and we're here so that you can catch a perspective on what American Anusim look like. The question that arises then, is there more Anusim in the United States? And yes, I say definitely. So, the second question is, how and when did these Anusim enter the United States of America? Now, that's a long historical story, and it's taken me 20 years to get this far. So I'm going to try to synthesize it, as they say, just to give you a bird's eye view. All right? So since the days of Christopher Columbus, Cristóbal Colón, that he crossed the ocean in 1492, checking la Santa Maria, La Pinta, all right, La Niña, La Pinta, La Santa Maria, his fleets of ships, the majority, if not all of his passengers, were of Sephardic surname, all right? If you look at the passengers and you consider the Diccionario de Sobrenombres Sefardíes, Dictionary of Sephardic Surnames by Aguirre Feigenbaum of Brazil, you'll find many of our names are still in there. So that's a primary indicator. Not a conclusion, but at least an indicator. Hey, because we've kept our the identity of our surnames. We have not changed our surnames. 88 years after Columbus, Don Luis de Carvajal y de la Cueva landed in the port of Tampico in 1580. That was what I call a compassionate conquistador. He was also Anusim. He consciously chose not to land in the port of Veracruz because to this very day stands tall an Inquisition prison where my wife and I have both been in, named San Juan de Ulua. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it or knew of it or have been inside of it. And that brings me the chills up and down my spine. When we were inside of that prison, it reminded me of the concentration camps that we have visited of Auschwitz and Birkenau in Poland. So it's horrible. The death spirit is there still very strongly. So by the way, my wife Helen, we've been not only in the San Juan de Ulua Inquisition prison, we've been inside el Palacio de la Inquisición, the Palace of the Inquisition in Mexico City. We stood in front of the place where they would burn the victims at the stake across a 175-year period, according to the Republic of Mexico's register. And it's there, and that's Convento San Diego, en el Distrito Colonial de la Ciudad de México, in the colonial section of the city of Mexico. Just 6 years later, in 1602, Anusim Conquistador Don Juan de Oñate passed through El Paso, Texas, El Paso meaning la pasada, the passage, the pathway into New Mexico, and established his headquarters in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So you may say, well, what does that have to do with today? De ahí descendemos. We descend from those types of explorers and conquistadores. After surviving the Spanish-Mexican War, which ended in 1821, just 24 years later, they faced another war. I want you to know that by 1845, because of the political theology of United States President James K. Polk, had as manifest destiny created, commissioned his army, the American army, to by force take all of the land west of the states of Kansas and Missouri. What did that do? It put enormous pressure on the Anusim that had been there way before Texas was Texas and way before the United States was the United States. So we've been forever in the jaws of trauma and pressure and crisis and wars, all right? So, but in the last 2 decades, my people, la gente Anusim de los Estados Unidos, the Anusim of the United States, have been experiencing a phenomenal awakening that is beyond explanation. We've gone through a lot of emotions. I'm reminded of psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who has written extensively on the death and dying process. And I will not get into that because this is not a session on psychiatry, but it's almost like we have needed psychiatrists in our life, if you know what I mean, in terms of the issues of the emotions, the grief and the anger and the resentment, as we discover some atrocious things that were perpetrated against our forefathers. So something in our soul, as Carl Gustav Jung, another psychiatrist, says, there's a collective unconscious, and the collective unconscious has to do with nuestra gente, our people. It's crying out. Nuestra sangre está clamando. Former Israeli diplomat to the islands and the nations of the Caribbean, Mardochai Arbel, stated at one of our conferences on Anusim, by the way. This was 15 years ago. When I would say, when they'd ask me, well, who are you? Where you come from? I'm Sephardic Anusim. That's look at me, puzzled. They go, Anusim? Now, I don't know what your interpretation is of Anusim, but I didn't get some very good reports as to the root of Anusim. It smacks of racially being raped. Okay? And so now it's a phenomenon that more and more people are aware of the term Anusim. Now, I could go on and on with these stories just to give you a bird's eye view that we're still here. We're in Texas and New Mexico. We've spread. We've prospered. If you recall, back before the Mexican Inquisition began, the reason why it began is porque la gente prohibida, the prohibited people that were prohibited from crossing the Atlantic, wound up getting into Mexico, and they were prospering and multiplying. So therefore, by 1524 and 1527, there were already a dozen and then another dozen of Catholic inquisitors planting themselves. So why an inquisition in Mexico that even wound up in the state of New Mexico in Mission Cuaray? So a lot of people don't know these things. Why an inquisition if there's no Anusim or crypto-Jews, as it were? So I would like to just show you a few slides, because, as I said, I could go on all day and all week, but I won't bore you with that. We have some material evidences. In my latest book, Out from Hiding, Evidences of Sephardic Roots Among Latinos, I speak about DNA, onomastics, which is art and science of surnames. I talk about oral histories, and etc. And one of them is material, physical objects. Reuben Durant of Albuquerque, New Mexico, was visiting his ancient ancestral home of La Abuelita, La Bisabuela, his great-grandmother, south of Albuquerque. And when he saw between a threshold from one room to the other, there was a piece of board. The home was in disrepair, all right? Se estaba cayendo. The house was falling. But he removed a piece of board from off the threshold, and beneath the board was a cubby hole. And within the cubby hole was that little teeny gold box, which I've had in my own palm. It's gold and the mother of pearl with a Star of David and a Hebrew emblem. And inside the little box was a mezuzah with Hebrew inscription. And he was like we say in Texas or America, he freaked out. He couldn't figure it out. So he asked his oldest uncle, ¿qué tenía abuelita ahí en este lugar de la casa? What did grandma have there in that part of the house? Oh, tenía una pintura del católico, el santo católico de San Martín de Porras. She had a Catholic saint there, a painting of San Martín de Porras, y cada vez que pasaba por ahí, le daba un beso. Every time she passed by there, she'd give him a kiss. He wasn't kissing San Martín de Porras. She was kissing the secreted object behind San Martín de Porras, all right? Which was a mezuzah. Well, not long afterward, in our search for evidences, physical evidences, we bumped into an old cemetery south of Albuquerque. It was a Catholic cemetery. It was not being kept. It was full of thorns. And we saw all of the gravestones where had their crosses. Well, this one has a cross, but it's got something else. If you read it, if you see it clearly, excuse me, because I'm not a professional photographer, otherwise the picture would be clear. It's got Hebrew letters on it besides Spanish words, which is very crypto-Jewish. And what are the Spanish letters in Hebrew? The first 5 of the 10 Commandments in Hebreo. So we begin to put some evidences to the fact that we are descendants of crypto-Jews. Next. We were in Gallina, New Mexico, northern New Mexico, not far from the Colorado border. And Isabel Morfin took us to her uncle's, to the land, to a ranch that she had inherited from her uncle Isaac Morfin. And Isaac Morfin would tell his family, nobody look ever at my gravestone, which I am building. The day he died, they discovered this particular gravestone. And I've seen it myself. All right? And if you look carefully, there is a Star of David, and inside the Star of David is a menorah. And Isabel Morfin says, yo nunca sospechaba que tío Isaac era un judío cripto. I never thought or suspected that Uncle Isaac was a crypto Jew. So these are just a few of the evidences. Now, one year when there was a tremendous blizzard, snow that hit through Colorado and northern New Mexico, and in fact, I'll never forget because I'm from San Antonio. It never snows, you know. So as we were going through the cemetery, este panteón, we find this other kind of a gravestone. And in the gravestone we find above the of blessed memory, Trinidad Gonzalez, you find the name of God in Hebrew letters. Well, what are the Hebrew letters doing there? I mean, you know that there's something about it where that, in this case, La Familia Gonzalez, the family of this lady, wanted to keep the legacy of the fact that there was some Judaism there. Now, if you go to Francis de Assisi, this is downtown Santa Fe, New Mexico, mind you. Well, so what's so great about St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Church? Well, for the first part, firstly, most of the Anusim Hispanics are graded builders even to this very day. You want masons and bricklayers and concrete layers, we're the ones to find, okay? Well, look at what was in the archway of this entrance of St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Cathedral in Santa Fe. All right? Here again, the name of God in Hebrew. All right? So, well, it might be a Catholic symbol, but I'll tell you, it's crypto. Yes. Yeah, you can comment after I leave. All right. Now, finally, if you go to Los Lunas, New Mexico, south of Albuquerque, there's what's called in original terms El Cerro de los Escondidos. I wonder why it's called the Mountains of the Hidden Ones. And in Paleo Hebrew, this boulder was discovered in the late 1800s, but recorded in 1933 by an anthropologist and archaeologist of the University of New Mexico. It's Paleo Hebrew, and what are the inscriptions on this boulder? And that young man there was me about when I was much younger. All right, Paleo Hebrew, the Ten Commandments. I could go on and on with evidences, both material evidences, sayings, dichos y refranes, sayings that we have that are Ladino. They may not be the Ladino of east of the Atlantic. They may not be the Ladino of Argentina and Chile, but they're the Ladino of the southwestern states of the United States. And some people have said, well, that's dirty Spanish. No, it's not dirty Spanish. It's our own Ladino. Thank you very much. All right? So, there are many other evidences, DNA, and I'll end with that. And I will not get into that, but my colleague and friend, Dr. Bennett Greenspan, with whom I've had a DNA project for over 10 years, and it again corroborates the fact that many of our Hispanic people that are taking bona fide DNA tests are coming out with very similar, and in some cases exact, DNA haplogroups as our Jewish family that are Sephardic and Ashkenazic. All right? So the evidences are there. The Anusim in the United States of America are alive. But as the rabbis presented this morning, necesitamos un poquito de amor y tolerancia. We need a little bit of love and tolerance. We need to not be pushed into conversions. Bear with me. We've already been converted to the point of being convulsed. We've converted from Roman Catholicism to Protestantism to Pentecostalism to evangelicalism to some other ism. So we're like burnt out with conversions. So I would just appeal to you as a man that's 71 years old, pushing 72, with 3 children, 10 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Sean pacientes, por favor. Be a little patient. Give us a little space to grow. And like the comic, the cartoon that Rabbi Bernhaum, by the way, is treated as royally in the Jewish Agency a few years ago, my wife and I, as he put the cartoon up there. First, the Catholic bishops and priests were trying to net us and catch us, and now it's the other way. Yeah, I don't need to say, right? And now it's some of the Jewish people we're not up for rebounds. We're not on a rebound. Give us a little space. It's a process. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years of having to survive the various conversions. And so we're moving forward. We're learning, we're maturing, we're better today. We're going and learning from people like Rabbi Scheinberg, Rodfei Shalom, he and his ministry that have funded a major project here. When you enter this particular college, his particular shul, Rodfei Shalom, have funded that project here. So, but I cannot say I'm an expert. I'm just a learner. An L here, here, here. Anywhere I turn, there's an L for learner. All right? So I pray, I hope that something that I've said has kind of a little tickled your heart as to bear with us as we grow, because we're the butt and the brunt of a lot of persecutions that people don't know of. All right? Shalom uvracha.